Prince Andrew heaps fresh embarrassment on the King and the government. It's after a former close confidant of the Duke of York is banned from the UK over fears he is a spy for China.
To see this now being exerted or possibly exerted over the royal family is very serious, because these are people who have access, who have reach across the United Kingdom.
More questions tonight over the Prince's judgment and scrutiny over his finances. And will the scandal undermine the government's reset of its relationship with China? Also tonight. A couple jailed over the murder of toddler Isabella Wheeldon, found dead in her pushchair in Ipswich. Scott Jeff inflicted a catalogue of injuries on the 2-year-old. His mother, Chelsea Gleeson Mitchell, admitted to also playing a part in her death. Horror at a Christmas fair in Birmingham after a ride fails and crashes to the ground. 2 men are arrested. Royal Mail fails to deliver its hit with a £10.5 million fine for missing first and second class delivery targets. And teen dart sensation Luke Littler steps up to the oche again, but can he go one step further at the World Championship?
I don't have any pressure on my shoulders right now. Maybe when it comes to the day of playing I might do, but I'm very excited to get back on stage.
This is the ITV Evening News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good evening. There is yet more humiliation for Prince Andrew after an alleged Chinese spy who was his close confidant was banned from the UK. The UK's semi-secret National Security Court upheld the ban on the unnamed businessman and noted his unusual degree of trust with the Duke of York. The court heard the man was invited to the Prince's birthday party and was authorised to act on Andrew's behalf when dealing with potential investors inside China. And a former security minister called the saga extremely embarrassing for the Prince. Here's our royal editor, Chris Shipp.
Since his very public and dramatic fall from grace, Prince Andrew has, very slowly, been allowed back into the occasional family event. This was him at Windsor Castle in Easter. But rewind to 2019, months before that Newsnight interview, the one about his friendship with sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, Andrew was taking his Dragon's Den-style project called Picture Palace to China. Now court documents suggest one of the Prince's Chinese contacts was someone the Home Secretary suspected was a spy. So what do we know? The man who we can't name was born in March 74. In 2002, he came to the UK to study at the University of York. He set up a travel company in 2005 and was granted indefinite leave to remain in the UK in 2013. But by 2021, counter-terrorism officers seized his phone and downloaded data from it. 2 years later, he was excluded from the UK, accused of working for a branch of the Chinese government called the United Front Work Department.
So we know that the United Front Works Department, which is a branch of the Chinese Communist Party, is trying to exert influence in various different ways through academics, through businesses. So to see this now being exerted or possibly exerted over the royal family is very serious.
I am sometimes considered a long-term friend of China's.
When the Duke of York was a working royal and when government policy was to be close to China, as it was in 2015, Andrew enjoyed his role during the Chinese state visit to London. He introduced the Chinese Premier Xi Jinping to the then Chancellor George Osborne. But data on the phone seized by counter-terrorism officers show what one of Andrew's advisors, Dominic Hampshire, wrote to the suspected spy. In 2002, Mr Hampshire said, "I hope it is clear to you where you sit with my principal, Prince Andrew, and indeed his family. Outside of his closest internal confidence, you sit at the very top of a tree that many, many people would like to be on."
He has a previous record for a lack of judgment. He has never really questioned much of his friends or his associates in this case. So for him to know that he was in a bit of a difficult situation with the royal family, with the public perception of him, he could have seen this relationship as a way to maybe come back into public life.
This is also awkward for the Prime Minister. At the G20 in Brazil last month, Sir Keir Starmer said he wanted to rework relations with China. Now it's accused of trying to spy on the brother of the King.
Well, Chris, yet more embarrassment for the Prince and the King.
Yeah, and the Prime Minister, as we've just been saying there as well, and it's all very difficult. And not for the first time, we've got court documents which are a little bit embarrassing for Buckingham Palace, and they'd rather these things weren't out there. Look, we should be clear, Buckingham Palace no longer acts for Prince Andrew. Ever since he stopped being a working member of the royal family, he's kind of on his own, and Buckingham Palace don't speak for them. I did manage to get through to one of Prince Andrew's friends today, and nor are they willing to comment on it. But, I said at the very top of that report there's been this very, very slow rehabilitation, if you can call it that, of Prince Andrew attending family events. Well, if you look at pictures of last Christmas, for example, at Sandringham, then Prince Andrew was part of that. I wouldn't be surprised, given what we've been talking about here this evening, whether that invitation list, at least to appear in public at Sandringham, is now under review, because obviously if he appears, we'll just be talking about, oh, there's Prince Andrew, who has been accused of having too close a relationship with a man who's suspected of being a spy for China. So look, it's a very difficult situation, but I mean, there's a lot in here, I have to say, about, in these court documents. Even this, suspected spy, in one of his points to note when talking to Prince Andrew, was saying, don't set the expectations too high. He, Prince Andrew, is in a desperate situation and will grab onto anything. Now, you've got these kinds of things in court documents. You can see why Buckingham Palace would rather this thing's not out there, even though, as I say, they no longer act for him.
Yes, Chris, thank you. Next tonight, a couple have been jailed over the murder of a toddler who was found dead in her pushchair. The body of 2-year-old Isabella Wheeldon was found at a temporary housing unit in Ipswich. It's thought she had died 4 days earlier, and her mother and mother's partner had continued to wheel her around in her buggy. And a warning that this report from Martha Fairley has details you may find upsetting.
For little Isabella Wheeldon, a holiday on the Norfolk coast was a big adventure, skipping as she held the hand of her mother's new boyfriend, Scott Jeff. Weeks later, the 2-year-old was dead after he subjected her to a cruel campaign of violence and abuse.
I'm arresting you, OK, due to the fact that Isabella, OK, was found alone and deceased at your home address.
24-year-old Chelsea Gleeson Mitchell, former nursery worker, had travelled with her daughter and Jeff to Norfolk and then Ipswich. Sunglasses and a puffer jacket hiding bruises on Isabella's face and arms. After a brutal beating that shattered her pelvis, the toddler died in a homeless hostel. Half an hour later, they left, pushing her lifeless body in a buggy. For 4 days, CCTV cameras filmed them wheeling the dead child on shopping trips for Xbox games and aftershave, even waving to the bus driver. And after abandoning Isabella's body in a bathroom in the hostel, they went to Bury St Edmunds, where her mother was seen smiling and laughing as she drank a glass of wine in the pub. Later, the pair were arrested.
All of the evidence that we have points to initially it being a warm and friendly holiday as it intended to be. It appears that that started to quite quickly go wrong. Those last 3 weeks, I have no doubt that there's some unimaginable suffering for poor Isabella, and that truly just breaks my heart.
Today, Scott Jeff was sentenced to life with a minimum 26 years in prison, having earlier been found guilty of Isabella's murder. Chelsea Gleeson Mitchell was given 10 years for causing or allowing her daughter's death, a judge describing her as a weak and spineless person who stood back and allowed that abuse and violence happen to her little girl. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
2 men have been arrested after several people were injured on a Christmas fairground ride in Birmingham city centre. 2 women were taken to hospital after a ride in Centenary Square failed and crashed last night. Well, Charlotte Cross is at the scene for us this evening. Charlotte, what happened?
Well, Lucrezia, you can only really imagine how terrifying it must have been for people here last night. This is the ride, the City Starflyer. Now, riders are spun around that tower that you can see there. They go up and down, and at around 7:30 last night, things started to go wrong. Eyewitnesses have described hearing strange noises and then the ride just dropping. Some say they were thrown into the barricades. Others have described being whipped by chains, and there was a huge emergency response here trying to free those trapped and injured. 2 women were taken to hospital, 11 others were injured. Now, an investigation is underway into what happened. The operator, Dantas Attractions, says it is cooperating with that investigation. We can show you some footage now from this afternoon. You can see how the chairs are still suspended in midair. You can see them wrapped around the barricades and how the chains have twisted together too. The Health and Safety Executive has had officers on the ground here today starting to look into what happened, and police are investigating too. 2 men were arrested last night, aged 55 and 21, on suspicion of perverting the course of justice and obstructing officers. They remain in custody this evening.
Charlotte in Birmingham, thank you. A man has been charged after a lorry came off a motorway and crashed onto a railway line. Train services between Glasgow Central and Carlisle via Dumfries were disrupted following the incident this morning. Police Scotland say a man has been taken to hospital and has been charged with a road traffic offence. And 2 people have been bailed after a baby girl was attacked by a dog believed to be an XL bully. The attack took place on Wednesday in Folkestone in Kent. Police say the 8-month-old remains in a serious condition. There was joy and jubilation on the streets of Syria today as mass rallies were staged to celebrate the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad. The country's new leader urged people to take part in what's being called Victory Day. In Syria's capital, Damascus, thousands of people descended on its oldest mosque to participate in the first Friday prayers since the Assad regime was toppled. Our correspondent John Ray saw scenes of celebration.
It is December, and yet Damascus has its spring at last. 13 years after their war of liberation began, today in their thousands they gathered to celebrate a victory unexpected and so all the sweeter.
In 1 week, whole Syria was freed. We really didn't expect this without any fight. They all surrendered. They're weak.
Best day of your life?
Exactly.
Earlier, there were Friday prayers like no other in the long history of the ancient Umayyad Mosque. And for the first time in half a century, without the Assad family in power. Pictures of their victims, the missing, are fixed to the walls. This nation bears deep scars.
Assad fell with astonishing speed, but with the dictator gone, powerful forces have been unleashed here. And in truth, no one can say where they will lead this country.
For the moment, amid the jubilation, the horrors of the past could be forgotten.
It means a future for everything. I don't know. I can't explain my feeling, actually.
All the people are happy. You can see it easily at every face, everywhere. Children, elderly, everyone. Wow.
But the fighters who did most to overthrow Assad are Islamists. God is in charge now, this soldier tells me. They are heroes to many, but to others, dangerous hardliners. And their flag fills Syrian liberals and minority sects with trepidation. Certainly, there's no mood to forgive those who carried out the regime's dirty work. These people are criminals, this man tells me, and the law must punish them. Syria's rebel leader has ditched the military fatigues along with his military name. Now Ahmed al-Shara, he speaks with moderation. Today, calling on the people to rebuild Syria. The euphoria will fade, and perhaps fade quickly. But Syria is changed, and the people have a chance for something better. John Ray, ITV News, Damascus.
There's more ahead on the ITV Evening News, including Royal Mail fined millions for missing delivery targets. Why the UK economy is unexpectedly shrinking. And we catch up with teenage dart star Luke Littler on his rising fame and the upcoming World Championship. That and more after the break. Hello and welcome back. Royal Mail has been hit with a record £10.5 million fine for failing to deliver first and second class post on time. In the last financial year, just under 75% of first class post was delivered on time, well short of its 93% target. Well, second class was also below target. The regulator Ofcom said far too many customers are not getting what they pay for. Here's our consumer editor, Chris Choi.
Christmas is coming fast, but is your post? Today, officials said Royal Mail's punctuality problem has affected millions. Pensioner Susan Chitty has just spent 2 weeks with no mail, then a pile arrived at once, with important medical letters affected.
I do rely on the actual post to come through the post, and for appointments to come to NHS, which are extremely important for us to attend. And there's, we're either missing them or they don't come, and then we've missed the slot and we're taken off the referral. And you think, well, that's not funny.
Royal Mail failed to meet targets in the 12 months to April. Only 74.7% of first-class letters were on time, far short of the 93% required. And 92.7% of second-class mail was punctual, against a 98.5% target. Today's £10.5 million fine was for failing to provide an acceptable level of service.
Millions of cards are sent every single year, and we completely rely on the post.
Entire sectors of business are affected by the reliability of the post or the lack of it.
Stamp prices have just gone up as well. What is the overall impact of this, do you think?
If people don't think that they're going to get their Christmas card before the 25th of December, they might be less likely to send it. So we are desperate for them to provide what is essentially a public service.
This comes down to millions of customers not getting what they paid for when they buy a stamp, eroding confidence in this crucial public service. But do fines really fix anything?
Chris, good to see you.
The postal regulator tried a multi-million-pound penalty last year, yet still we've seen these problems.
We did fine them £5.5 million last year. And they did sit up and take notice to that.
But still their standards didn't go high enough.
Yes, that's right. So last year they didn't get back up to acceptable standards.
So fines don't work?
Well, we do think they work because we have seen some green shoots of progress.
Tonight, as the festive post peaks, Royal Mail declined an interview. Long term, it wants to reduce the number of delivery days as a way to bring greater reliability to what we pop in the post. Chris Choi, ITV News.
The government's pledge to get the UK economy growing has taken another blow, with figures showing it actually shrank for a second month in a row. Official data for October showed GDP, a measure of goods and services we produced, fell by 0.1%. It fell by the same amount in September. Our Deputy Political Editor, Anushka Rastana, is in Westminster. Anushka, what's been the Chancellor's reaction to this?
Well, it is not the news that she wanted to hear. Remember that for Rachel Reeves, economic growth is the #1 priority. I remember asking her in the election campaign before she was Chancellor, why can't you commit to policies like raising the 2-child benefit cap? And she said to me, because we need economic growth for that. Now, privately, Labour were quite confident that by just providing stability, that would trigger growth. And actually, it's looking more difficult than that. This is obviously part of a longer-term trend. Emily Fry at the Resolution Foundation said it's a medium-term picture that is staid and stagnant due to services and production. Now, it won't surprise you that Rachel Reeves suggests this is down to her economic inheritance.
The numbers on GDP are disappointing, but it's not possible to turn around more than a decade of poor economic growth and stagnant living standards in just a few months. But you'll see from the plans we've been announcing, whether that is the energy reforms we've published today, the reforms to build 1.5 million homes that we published yesterday, the pensions reforms, the creation of a national wealth fund, this government are getting on with the job in improving economic growth and driving up living standards.
Now, it's worth saying that on those policies that Labour are relying so heavily on, the Office for Budget Responsibility has so far been pretty cautious, quite sceptical, including on that environmental investment and including on planning reform. It will be interesting to see if they become more optimistic.
All right, Anushka in Westminster. Thank you. Some sport now, and the home nations have found out which countries they'll face in qualifying for the 2026 World Cup. England, under new manager Thomas Tuchel, will face Serbia, Albania, Latvia and Andorra. Wales will face Belgium, North Macedonia, Kazakhstan and Liechtenstein. Scotland are up against Greece, Belarus and the winner of the Portugal versus Denmark Nations League match. Northern Ireland will meet Slovakia, Luxembourg and the loser of the Germany versus Italy Nations League quarter-final. Teen dart sensation Luke Littler has told ITV how he hopes to go one better this year and win the World Darts Championship. His amazing professional debut at the tournament last year saw him finish as runner-up and bring new fans to the sport. And he insists he's feeling no pressure as he seeks more glory at London's Alexandra Palace. Ian Woods reports.
He's the teenager who, a year ago, even most darts fans would struggle to recognise. Maybe that's why his sudden rise to fame made Luke Littler the most Googled sports star in Britain in 2024.
You're going to get me a 180? What?
The darts wonder kid got more internet searches than even the new Prime Minister, even though the then 16-year-old finished as the runner-up in the World Championship.
I know this year's been crazy, but even me and my family, my manager said if I won it this year, then it would have been even crazier. Obviously, when I come runner-up, the world went mad. But I think if I did win it, it would have gone even crazier.
Luke Littler! It wasn't the world champion Luke Humphries who was getting invites to rub shoulders with showbiz celebrities. He'll also be part of ITV's revamp of the quiz show Bullseye.
A sensational story!
Luke won a string of titles during his first year in the big time, success that's allowed him to buy a new house where he lives with his mum and dad.
But can he go one better and win here at Alexandra Palace? The World Championship gets underway on Sunday, but the teenager will have to be patient. His first match isn't until next Saturday.
It feels weird going back. Obviously, that's where it all started. But I don't have any pressure on my shoulders right now. Maybe when it comes to the day of playing, I might do. But I'm very excited to get back on stage.
His story has helped bring darts to a new audience. Interest in the sport has exploded. But this year, Littler will arrive with huge expectations. He's the bookies' favourite.
Double top.
Ian Woods, ITV News, Alexandra Palace.
No pressure at all. You're watching the ITV Evening News. It is just coming up to 7 o'clock. Emma Dale is here in half an hour. But first... The new police app using facial recognition to identify people. Is it a breach of civil liberties?
This does require the individual person's consent. We need to have a lawful policing purpose to use the technology.
Driving a regional divide. Fewer electric charging stations are being built in rural areas.
You're an idiot.
Get up!
Show us your hand right now.
Show us your hand!
The dramatic arrest of a man stuck in a chimney. The inspiring story of the struggling author now hitting the big time.
And with only 12 days to go, it is beginning to look a lot like Christmas. But what will the weather do this weekend? Will it feel like Christmas? I'll have all the details for you a little later in the programme.
But first, a special report on how some of the UK's bathing sites are even more polluted than previously thought. ITV News can reveal that many contain a cocktail of chemicals and bacteria, some of which can make you seriously sick and others which could cause cancer. We were given exclusive figures by Watershed Investigations, which has tested 23 bathing sites across the country. The tests were carried out twice a day, every day for a week this summer. It searched for more pollutants than the standard Environment Agency tests. It found levels of E. coli over recommended thresholds at a third of sites. The remnants of drugs and medications we use, including antibiotics and sunscreen. And perhaps most alarmingly, almost all contained antimicrobial resistant genes. Now, they are likely to have come from sewage or from farms, and scientists say it could make antibiotics less effective. Campaigners are calling for both the scope and frequency of testing to be greatly improved. Our science correspondent Martin Stew reports now on what lies beneath.
It's really bad. It's thick. It's like you can see it, smell it.
From athlete to patient, Josh says he was left bedbound by E. coli in the sewage he sculls through.
I couldn't eat for 3 weeks, to the point where I had to go to hospital and get on a IV drip. And they said that, you know, there's a lot of sewage and in the river at the minute, so that's probably most likely what it is.
You might not expect the Thames in central London to be clean, but what about areas specifically designated for bathing? Sheep's Green in Cambridge is one of 35 inland in England.
It's exhilarating to get in and get out. You get a kind of rush of energy when you've been in the water.
Yeah, an exhilaration.
I saw a heron.
The water Simon and Vanessa love is, according to the Environment Agency, poor quality, with high levels of E. coli, often a marker of animal or human excrement.
I've given up doing front crawl because I got so ill from doing that. I just think it's very sad that the river's gradually being progressively poisoned for myself and for others.
What exactly is that poison? Testing by Watershed Investigations, shared exclusively with ITV News, has sampled 23 bathing sites, searching for more than the bacteria the Environment Agency monitors.
They've just released their bathing water classifications, and this mixed pond here came out as excellent for E. coli, which is brilliant. But when we looked at it, we found there were lots of other chemicals in there. So we found pesticides, pharmaceuticals, for example, anticonvulsants, antidiabetics, and we found industrial chemicals like PFAS in there, which a couple of those are known to be carcinogenic.
They're known as forever chemicals. 6 different ones were found in Hampstead Bathing Pond, including one which can, at a much, much higher concentration, cause cancer. The big question, and this is one that lots of scientists are looking at the moment, is what happens when those chemicals get combined. Is it similar to mixing your drinks on a night out? And if so, what impact could that have not just on humans, but on wildlife too? Analysis at the University of York found Frensham Great Pond had 22 times the level of E. coli deemed safe in the USA, and other sites, including the Severn, Wharfe and Thames, had high levels of vet medicines and UV filters from sunscreens washed off us and our pets.
Under each of these spikes is a different chemical, essentially, in our river water sample. In this study, we detected up to 48 different chemicals.
In all but one bathing site, they found something else. AMR, or antimicrobial resistance genes, which can be bad news for antibiotics.
The worry with antimicrobial resistance is that bacteria may assimilate these genes into their genetic sequence. The real concern here is that it would render the medicines that we use to treat bacterial infections ineffective or less effective than they normally would be.
Scientists say that and E. coli levels probably pose a bigger risk to humans than chemicals because they're heavily diluted. The Environment Agency says its testing is robust, but the government is consulting on making changes as part of what it describes as the biggest reform of the water system for a decade. Until then, it's hard to be clear exactly what we're swimming in. Martin Stew, ITV News.
And we have the full findings of this investigation on our website. Head over to itv.com/news. Let's get an update on what is making the news tonight. Prince Andrew has heaped fresh embarrassment on the King and the government after one of his close confidants, an unnamed businessman, was banned from the UK for being an alleged Chinese spy. The couple has been jailed over the murder of a toddler. The body of 2-year-old Isabella Wheeldon was found in Ipswich. And G7 leaders say they will respect Syria's territorial integrity, independence and sovereignty during this transitional political period. The Prime Minister said that in the last hour the fall of Assad's regime was welcomed following the virtual G7 meeting. The wife of former England rugby star Tom Voice has described how she is absolutely devastated and heartbroken over his death. The 43-year-old went missing in Northumberland on Sunday during Storm Dara. His body was found yesterday. Fred Dimbleby is here. Fred, a really touching tribute from Anna Voice tonight.
Yeah, and she added today that she had been overwhelmed by the response of those who had helped her to search for her husband. Police believe that he was swept away by a river when trying to cross a ford in his car. The river was particularly high, as you mentioned, because of Storm Dara. And after days of searching, a body was found, which has now been officially confirmed to have been his. This image has also been released of Mr. Voice, who won 9 caps for England in his playing career, along with his wife, Anna. She shared an emotional tribute saying Tom was proud and cherished his rugby memories. And as an adopted Northumbrian local, he leaves a hole in so many of her heart. She also added that their son Oscar was immensely proud of his father, the best role model he could ask for.
Oh, all right, Fred, thank you. Privacy campaigners have raised concerns over a new facial recognition phone app. 2 police forces in Wales are rolling out the technology and say it will be used on people who refuse to give their details or provide false details. It could also be used to identify people who are unconscious or dead. But as Carrie Davis reports, campaigners say it should be regulated.
Find yourself, one that step there, that's it. Do you know your name?
No. In this promotional video released by South Wales and Gwent police forces, a missing woman unable to remember her name is identified using a new facial recognition app.
So by using my phone, I can take a picture of you and it will help me to find out who you are. And
today, my photo was added to a test database to see how it works.
And I will take a photo of you now. If the photo I've taken of you is of good enough quality and you are in our database, it will find you every time.
So that's
the file image that you submitted to us, yeah. So that's in the test image database. And from there, we can make a direct comparison.
It's then the officer that decides whether they think it's a match.
Yeah, that's correct.
Police say in cases where someone is wanted for a criminal offence, the app will help secure a quick arrest.
This does require the individual person's consent. We need to have a lawful policing purpose to use the technology, and we have to have reasonable grounds.
If someone's lying about their identity, they're very unlikely to give consent for a photo.
And that's where the officers got the option then to continue that engagement and take them to the police station.
In Bridgend town centre, people I spoke to were broadly in favour of its use.
If people have done something wrong, then they need to be picked up really quickly.
If you've done nothing wrong, then you've got nothing really to fear. That's my viewpoint.
No, the government shouldn't be authorising the police, because this is a police state then. It's no different than Soviet Russia.
Police say the app will only be used if someone is unable or unwilling to identify themselves, or if an officer believes they are lying. And that person must be dead, believed missing, suspected of a crime or wanted by the courts, or posing a threat to themselves or others.
But campaigners are worried about the impact on civil liberties.
The police should be spending money and time on community-led policing, not on unproven, untested and occasionally discriminatory and biased technologies and tools.
They're calling for greater government regulation of the technology. The Prime Minister is supportive of police harnessing its power. Carrie Davis, ITV News, Bridgend.
A predator who was caught on CCTV raping and killing an NHS worker on a park bench has been jailed for life. Mohammed Lido attacked mother of three, Natalie Shotter, while she was passed out in West London after a night out. Judge Richard Marks remarked that taking advantage of Natalie was wicked and utterly reckless. A woman who was harassed by a colleague at a work Christmas event has been awarded £36,000. Fernanda Hemresia said she experienced unwanted and inappropriate physical contact at the event, which she said was witnessed by other colleagues. She settled her case against a colleague for £21,000 and her employer for £15,000. And planned strikes by workers on Avanti West Coast have been suspended. Members of the transport union RMT were due to walk out on December the 22nd, 23rd and 29th. Union members will now vote on a revised offer aimed at resolving a row over rest day working. The shocking disparity between the number of electric car charging points in urban and rural areas has been highlighted by the National Audit Office. It found just 15% of England's public charge points are in rural locations and says more focus is needed in improving access outside of towns and cities. Well, here's our correspondent Ben Chapman on the power struggle.
Cutting through the countryside close to the Welsh border, the A49 is both a remote and busy road. But if, like me, you're driving an electric car, it's also one of the toughest on which to find a charger. This supermarket car park is one of the few places to plug in. Drivers say journeys here need a plan.
You know, if you know where to go, there's one that will get you to where you want to go to, but it is a bit, that's not really enough, is it?
Even the ones that are in suburban and urban areas are relatively unpredictable, but there's usually enough of them that you can find another one if you need to. But if you're in a rural area, if the one that you go to isn't working, then you're up the creek.
Her anxiety is well-founded.
And it's all very confusing.
The National Audit Office says there aren't enough chargers in places like this. The next one I visited, 8 miles up the road, didn't work.
Now, it's a good thing my battery isn't actually flat. If it were, it'd be quite alarming, because this is one of only 3 rapid charging stations in about a 30-mile stretch of the A49.
By last summer, more than 64,000 chargers had been installed in England. Today's report says that's on track to meet the government target of 300,000 by 2030. But only 15% are in rural areas and 44% are in London and the South East.
Rural communities are those most likely to drive by car rather than use public transport, so making sure they've got sufficient supply of chargers is important. Now, in many rural communities, they'll be able to charge at home because they've got off-street parking, but we know that's not always the case.
Providers say the network is doubling every 2 years, but getting rapid chargers on the road is often a slow process.
We're rolling out at record pace, but we do face some barriers, and they are principally grid connection challenges, planning challenges and permitting challenges. All those things just take far too long. So we're trying to work with the government and local authorities and the grid connection companies to try and speed up and simplify those processes.
1 in every 4 new cars sold is now electric. By 2030, the government wants them all to be. It's spending £2 billion supporting the industry and making charge points simpler. But the network still needs to improve if drivers everywhere are to make the switch. Ben Chapman, ITV News, Shropshire.
Wanted singer Max George is facing surgery for a suspected heart condition after being rushed into hospital. The 36-year-old sent a social media update from his hospital bed saying he was surrounded with love and support. Well, it comes just 2 years after his bandmate Tom Parker died from brain cancer. Our entertainment reporter Rishi Dabda is here. Rishi, what more can you tell us about this?
Well, there were thousands of messages of support under Max George's post, which he put up last night. He announced he'll be spending Christmas in hospital after a number of tests found that there are some issues with his heart. The 36-year-old posted this photo from his hospital bed, giving a thumbs up after he was taken into hospital when he began feeling really unwell, as he put it. He didn't go into any more detail as to what the health problems are, but did say that he needs a lot more tests to figure out what surgery he's going to have. Now, Max rose to fame in the early 2010s as part of The Wanted, with bandmates Siva Kanaswaran, Nathan Sykes, Jay McGuinness and Tom Parker. Tom died in 2022 from an aggressive form of brain cancer. Max and Siva had recently announced that they were forming The Wanted 2.0 and planning to perform in the UK again next February. As for now, though, Max says he's in shock. This is all a bit of a setback, but he's being supported by friends and family and his girlfriend, former EastEnders actor Maisie Smith. He said that he's likely to be in bed for the next month or so, but we'll keep posting updates.
Oh, gosh, we wish him well. Rishi, thank you. Now, an 18-year-old has become the youngest world chess champion in history, shocking the world of chess and those watching the win unfold from his home country of India.
This is the moment! Look at Gukesh! Gukesh knows it! Oh my God! He's becoming the world champion! 18-year-old! Oh my God! Gukesh will be the world chess champion! Gukesh!
Gukesh Dommaraju was a chess grandmaster when he was just 12, and now at the ripe old age of 18, he's taken the world championship title from defending champion Ding Lijian. The 14-game match was tied with 2 wins each after 13 games until Lijian made a blunder on move 55, giving Gukesh the chance to dramatically clinch the title. All right, we'll just have an update on our main story tonight. And Prince Andrew has just released a statement in the last few minutes. He says he has ceased all contact with the businessman accused of being a Chinese spy after receiving advice from the government. The statement further said he met the individual through official channels and that nothing of a sensitive nature was ever discussed. For more on this story, head over to our website, itv.com/news. Next tonight, the Santa-inspired escape route that didn't quite work out for a man who fled from police in America. Robert Langley went on the run from officers who tried to execute a search warrant, but he ended up stuck fast in a place normally reserved for Father Christmas. Caroline Lewis has the story.
Hey, he's on the roof!
It may not quite be Christmas Eve, but overhearing these officers, you could be forgiven for thinking Santa had come early.
He's in the chimney. What chimney? Dana said he went in the chimney.
But there was no sleigh in sight this night.
You're an idiot. Get up. Show us your hand right now. Show us your hand.
This wannabe St Nick's clever ruse to evade police didn't go exactly according to plan.
Tell him to send rescue. Are you stuck? What?
That body's in the chimney. You want to roll a rescue?
Are you stuck?
The man in the chimney is 33-year-old Robert Langley. In a pun-laden post on Facebook, alongside a very seasonal mugshot, local police described his actions as invoking the essence of a seasonal icon.
I was thinking just these,
Albeit with a little less finesse, as he now desperately needed help from the officers he had previously been running from. But Langley was so wedged in the stack, police had to call for reinforcements.
Hey, is the medic still down there?
Body cam footage shows firefighters having to remove a section of the chimney base in order to release him. Langley was subsequently arrested for possession of drugs and what officers said were a slew of charges from outstanding warrants, leaving no doubt which of Santa's lists he'll be on come Christmas Eve. Caroline Lewis, ITV News.
Still to come on the programme, how authors are using social media to climb the bestsellers lists.
And I'm here at Audley End Miniature Railway on board the Santa train. I wonder if he knows what's happening this weekend. Let's go and ask him, shall we? Back in 2.
Join me and Becky after the short break. Hello and welcome back. Time for the all-important weekend weather now. Becky is in North Essex this evening. Becky, it's looking very festive behind you.
It certainly is. We are 12 days out from the big day, and I am finally permitted to mention Christmas. It's been a long time. I would start mentioning it in about mid-August. Anyway, it is very difficult not to feel festive when you're here at Audley End Miniature Steam Train near Saffron Walden in North Essex. It is so gorgeous. Frankly speaking, when you're surrounded by this many twinkling lights, over 2,000 people a day visit to get into the spirit of things. They're travelling 1.5 miles through a miniature little train set through the woods to go and see the big man himself. Now, of course, everyone has been wrapped up very warm against the winter chill today, and of course at this time of year it's really very traditional to be gazing up to see a particular star in the night sky. But this weekend we've got more reasons to be gazing upwards, and that of course is the Geminid meteor showers. Now they are going to be peaking this weekend. Up to 150 meteors an hour could be spotted if the weather is good enough. You need to look northeastwards from about 7 o'clock. So for this evening the best place to see them is going to be pretty much anywhere across the UK, particularly across England and Wales. But then as we look ahead to tomorrow, the chances are reasonable through Saturday night, but by the time then I'm afraid we get to Sunday, we've got a lot of cloud around, so the chances are less good. Let's look now at the details for the forecast for the weekend.
Visibility may be low this evening as the cold weather hits. Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.
So after a really grotty few days, well, we have seen an awful lot of cloud around and bits and bobs of rain, kind of drizzly and miserable and not at all in the spirit of things. We're going to be seeing some brightness through tomorrow. So brighter through tomorrow. On Sunday, though, I'm afraid we are expecting to see a largely cloudy day and the potential for some very wet and windy conditions, particularly across the far northwest. So let's get the detail then as we look ahead to this evening and overnight. You can see that we've got that cold front sitting across the UK, and it's behind that we actually start to get something a little bit clearer starting to move in across the UK. But for tonight itself, it's cloudy in the south and a little bit drier and a little bit clearer further north, and temperatures dropping down to just below freezing for many. Then we have a look ahead to tomorrow morning. It's going to be quite a grotty start, I'm afraid, across the southern parts of the UK, but all the time that cold front is going to be sliding southwards across the UK, bringing something a lot clearer and brighter. It is going to be a really lovely day across many areas. The chance of a few coastal showers, particularly across those western areas, but cloud thickens and rain arrives towards the northwest later on in the day, and that, I'm afraid, is going to be with you for the rest of the weekend. Then we jump ahead to Sunday, and for most of us it is going to be a largely cloudy sort of picture. Largely dry though, I think, apart from once again we do have that wind and rain sitting across the far northwestern parts, but for everyone it's a pretty mild sort of day.
Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.
So it's mild and cloudy, I'm afraid, all the way until Tuesday from Sunday. But then early signs, probably from the big man, that it's looking cold as we get closer to Christmas. Woohoo! Back to you.
Fantastic. Becky, thank you. And finally tonight, the struggling author and the real-life rags-to-riches story. Vicky Ball sold just 2 of her fiction books at a recent fair in Chelmsford in Essex. She was so happy she shared her success on social media, but it quickly gained more than 24 million views and catapulted her to the top of the bestseller list. She told Charlie Frost her unlikely tale.
This is it.
OK, wow. 746,000 likes and 25 million views.
Sometimes all it takes is 2 words, 1 number and a couple of emojis to turn your fortunes around.
So I did a book event and I sold 2 books, which I was genuinely happy about. And I posted on X and it said sold 2 books with 2 smiley faces, because I was genuinely happy that I'd sold some books.
Within a day, that post had gone viral.
It was just lots of kind of, oh, go girl, you know, on Lots of people calling me Queen.
A mum of two, Vicky started writing at her dining table in Essex during the pandemic. In 2021, a small publisher brought out her debut novel, Powerless. Since, though, she's had to do her own marketing, which has been tough alongside a full-time job, until her latest post on X rocketed her book to the top of Amazon sales charts.
Yesterday morning, I think, when I woke up and saw the bestseller banner on there, and I thought, oh, this is exciting.
So tell me what you think it was about your post that resonated with so many people.
I suppose because, you know, I was just an ordinary person, perhaps, and I think some people maybe felt sorry for me, that they thought, you know, oh, she's only sold 2 books, let's help her out. And I think some of them thought I was maybe being humorous, but it was genuinely me just being really happy that I'd sold 2 books. It still feels a bit like a dream, that it doesn't feel like any of this is real. But
From Powerless to viral hit, Charlie Frost, ITV News.
And that's it. Gamar's back later at 10 past 10. But from me and the Evening News team, bye-bye.